Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha. Recently, RPCS3, an open-source PlayStation 3 emulator for PC, came under fire from Atlus Games over the emulator's posted instructional information regarding the emulator's ability to play Persona 5. On December 23rd, Patreon received a DMCA takedown notice for the RPCS3 Patreon page by Atlus Games on the basis that Atlus felt the Patreon page was infringing on their copyright. Atlus claimed the copyright infringement was based upon their DRM having to be circumvented in order for users to be able to create a ROM for the emulator software to run. Patreon declined the DMCA takedown request, citing that Atlus had failed to make a cogent argument for exactly how the RPCS3 Patreon page was infringing on their copyright. In regards to all of this, Atlus released the following statement. You might have heard earlier today that we issued a DMCA takedown notice involving emulation developer group RPCS3 and their Patreon page. Yes, it's true. We settled upon this action for two reasons. We believe that our fans best experience our titles, like Persona 5, on the actual platforms for which they are developed. We don't want their first experiences to be frame rate drops or crashes or other issues that can crop up in emulation that we have not personally overseen. We understand that many Persona fans would love to see a PC version, and while we don't have anything to announce today, we are listening. For now, the best way to experience Persona 5 is on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 3. We appreciate the awareness generated by the emulation community for Persona 5 and know that it is a fantastic example of how much people are loving our game. We want to keep bringing you titles like Persona 5. Unfortunately, when our content is illegally circumvented and potentially made available for free in a format we do not think delivers the experience and quality we intend, it undermines our ability to do so by diverting potential support from new audiences. We want to continue having a dialogue about where and how you would like to play our games. Please let us know what you think. Now, laying all the extra public relations doublespeak aside, this is actually a fairly interesting incident concerning copyright law and fair use, as Atlus's complaints could be seen as valid or not valid based on any number of instances. First, we should talk about whether or not it is legal to make duplicates of games, and for that we'll turn to our good friends over at LegalZoom for part of an answer. And it would seem that an argument could quite easily be made for emulator ROMs falling under fair use, which is an exemption within copyright law. This comes in two parts. The first is in regards to software, which LegalZoom states the following. Copyright law permits you to make one copy of your computer software for the purpose of archiving the software in case it is damaged or lost. In order to make a copy, you must own a valid copy of the software and must destroy or transfer your backup copy if you ever decide to sell, transfer, or give away your original valid copy. It is not legal to sell a backup copy of software unless you are selling it along with the original. The second applicable part comes in relation to CDs and DVDs, which states, in addition to making a backup copy of software, it is legal to make a backup copy of a CD or DVD so that you can continue to enjoy the copyrighted material if your original copy fails. It is illegal to make copies of CDs or DVDs if you intend to distribute them to third parties, even by giving them away. Additionally, in some instances, it may be unlawful to circumvent anti-piracy technology in order to make a backup copy of a CD or DVD. So one could argue quite easily that as long as one purchases a legal copy of the game, they are entitled under fair use doctrine to be able to create a backup or archive for personal use, so long as it remains for personal use and the original game is not sold to another party. However, there is the issue surrounding the circumventing of anti-piracy technology, of which DRM would certainly qualify. This could potentially allow Atlus a foundation to be able to combat the creation of a ROM of their game. This is by no means a guarantee that Atlus is in the right here, but it would allow them an arguable legal footing to stand on. In that regard, there is also a legal precedent dating all the way back to the year 2000. In the lawsuit Sony vs. Bleem, Sony sued Bleem for running PlayStation games on unapproved hardware and for using Sony imagery in its advertising. Bleem, the developers of a Sony PlayStation emulator, won the case. However, the legal fees incurred forced them to shutter their doors in August of 2001. That said, Atlus's footing here could be considered shaky at best, and I can, to a certain extent, understand where they're coming from. Once an emulator ROM is created, it would be extremely easy to distribute illegally. However, it seems that the argument over bypassing the DRM would be the only legal claim Atlus would have in this regard. And it seems a bit of a non-issue in most regards, though. Emulators themselves are not illegal, nor are instructional material in how to use them. The exception, again, being the circumvention of anti-piracy technologies, but again, that only falls under certain circumstances. It would seem to me that the real issue here is what the end users do with emulators and their technology that has Atlus so concerned. And while I know that Atlus has a habit of either resorting to or threatening to resort to the DMCA at the drop of a hat, in this regard their argument seems to be based on what could be considered a slight touch of paranoia. It's no secret that Atlus protects their copyright with great zeal, and in this instance the concern seems to be focused entirely on the circumvention of the DRM. This would speak very much toward a fear of piracy, something which companies would only typically fear if it somehow cuts into their bottom line in some way or another. This is not really something that I could see easily happening in this case. The PlayStation 3 is considered depreciated hardware. It would seem that those that would have bought Persona 5 on that platform have most likely done so, and those that would make use of a PC-based emulator would be exceptionally unlikely to purchase the game to begin with. However, PC-based emulation could actually help sell more copies of the game. And while I know that some would say that piracy is far too easy on an emulation system, you have to remember that piracy happens on every system regardless of when or where it is. And it's not something to be feared. Recently, a study conducted in 2015 surfaced that shows quite readily that piracy of video games on PC do not hinder sales at all. In fact, it's actually quite the opposite. Most gamers have no qualms paying developers their due when it comes to the content being provided. However, some would love to be able to know that they would actually like the game before they buy it. There are a lot of budget-conscious gamers out there that use pirating as a way to engage in a now all but obsolete practice that used to be extremely common, and that is the idea of a demo. If they like it, they're likely to purchase it. If they don't, they won't. So in most instances, nothing is lost by the existence of the pirated software. Now, I am by no means condoning video game piracy in any way. I'm merely stating the facts based on a single $500,000 study. But it would seem to me that if those games developers were to encourage emulation, they could find a ready market that would be all too willing to purchase copies of their games. This is what happens when a game isn't exclusive to a single platform. If it is available on other platforms, more people will be able to buy it. This is not a new idea by any means, but it is also possible that by supporting emulators, Atlus could be inviting the wrath of their Sony overlords. And while that is only a bit of speculation, it would seem to be somewhat valid, especially considering Sony's stance on cross-platform play amongst a number of other practices that could be considered anti-consumer at best. In the end, though, emulators have been around for a very long time, and they aren't going to be going anywhere anytime soon. And if they are used legally, they are a fantastic tool that will allow PC gamers access to games that were previously exclusive to consoles, as well as allow console gamers a chance to be able to continue playing their favorite games while being able to preserve the integrity of the media of those games. And as we've been speaking about Patreon, don't forget that I actually have a Patreon as well. Contributing either there or through YouTube's sponsorship system will give you access to my private Discord server, as well as being able to help forward me toward my goal of being able to take this channel full-time, a chance that very few content creators ever even have a remote possibility of having happen. Links are in the description of all of my videos, as well as notification in the upper right corner of the video. In the meantime, please do feel free to let me know what you think about all of this down in the comments below. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.